Here's something most people won't like hearing about the Suzuki Boulevard C50 2026. This bike isn't trying to impress anyone anymore. And honestly, that might be the smartest thing Suzuki has done with it. When I first looked into the 2026 C50, I wasn't excited. Cruiser segment fatigue is real. Everything starts to blur together after a while. Chrome, teardrop tanks, relaxed seating, the same promises of timeless design. But the more time I spend comparing it to newer cruisers, the more I realized something interesting. The C50 hasn't evolved much because it doesn't need to. I noticed Suzuki isn't chasing trends here. No aggressive redesign, no tech overload, no attempt to turn this into a pseudo-sport cruiser or a budget bagger. Instead, the C50 feels almost stubbornly consistent, and in 2026, consistency has become rare. Most people assume that makes it outdated. I'm not so sure. When I compared the Boulevard C50 to newer mid-size cruisers, especially ones trying to look modern, I kept asking myself one question: who is actually more comfortable living with their bike long-term? The C50's 805cc V-twin isn't headline-grabbing. It won't win spec sheet battles. But what surprised me was how predictable and usable that engine still is. It's tuned for low-end torque in a way that feels calm, not lazy. You roll on the throttle and the bike responds exactly how you expect. No drama, no sudden surge, just smooth forward motion. Most people miss how valuable that is. In real-world riding, especially city traffic and relaxed highway cruising, predictability matters more than peak numbers. The C50 doesn't push you to ride harder. It invites you to settle in. That's a subtle but important difference. One common misconception is that cruisers like this are boring to ride. I think boring is the wrong word. The better word is uncomplicated. I noticed Suzuki has kept the shaft drive, and honestly, I'm glad they did. Chain drives are great, but they demand attention. Belts feel refined, but they can be expensive to replace. The shaft drive on the C50 quietly does its job without asking for much in return. For riders who actually want to ride more than wrench, this matters. Here's a practical takeaway most reviews skip. If you're someone who rides once or twice a week, not every day, low-maintenance ownership changes your entire experience. The C50 fits that lifestyle perfectly. Now let's talk about weight, because this is where assumptions get tricky. On paper, the Boulevard C50 looks heavy. And yes, at a standstill, you feel it. But once it's moving, the balance is better than people expect. The low seat height plays a huge role here. I compared it mentally to taller cruisers that feel lighter on spec sheets, but tiptoe it stops. The C50 feels planted, grounded, confidence-inspiring, especially for shorter riders or anyone stepping up from smaller bikes. Most people assume the C50 is only for beginners. I disagree. It's not a starter bike, it's a settling bike. The kind of motorcycle you choose when you already know what you like and don't feel the need to prove anything. The riding position hasn't changed much, and that's intentional. Wide bars, forward-ish controls, a seat that prioritizes comfort over aggression. What surprised me was how neutral it feels after longer rides. No sharp pressure points, no constant shifting to stay comfortable. Here's a small insight that matters more than horsepower. If a bike disappears underneath you after 30 minutes, it's doing something right. The C50 does exactly that. Now let's address the elephant in the room: tech. The 2026 C50 doesn't drown you in screens, modes, or rider aids. Some people see that as a flaw. I see it as clarity. There's something refreshing about a motorcycle that doesn't ask you to configure it before riding. You turn the key, you ride. That's it. The mistake many riders make is assuming more tech automatically equals a better experience. But for cruisers, simplicity often enhances the emotional connection. The C50 leans into that philosophy unapologetically. That said, this bike isn't perfect. I noticed the suspension still feels tuned more for comfort than control. If you push it through rough roads or aggressive corners, it reminds you what it is. This isn't a canyon carver pretending to be a cruiser, and that honesty is something I respect. Another point most people overlook is sound. Stock exhausts on cruisers are often criticized, but the C50's tone is surprisingly mature. Not loud, not obnoxious, just a steady V-twin rhythm that feels authentic without demanding attention. Here's a practical takeaway for anyone considering this bike in 2026. If you're planning heavy customization, the C50 is a solid base. But if you want something that already feels complete out of the box, this bike doesn't beg for changes. I also compared the C50 to newer entry-level cruisers that cost similar money. Many of them look modern but feel disposable. The Boulevard still feels like it was built to last. Not flashy, not trendy, just solid. That leads to an uncomfortable truth. The C50 might not excite you on YouTube thumbnails, but it quietly wins in ownership satisfaction. And that's something algorithms don't measure. Most people shopping in this segment are chasing identity. The C50 isn't about identity. It's about comfort with who you already are as a rider. If you're looking for innovation, this isn't your bike. If you're looking for reassurance, it might be exactly what you need. After spending time thinking about the Suzuki Boulevard C50 2026, I realized this bike doesn't ask for your attention. It earns your trust. And in a world of motorcycles trying too hard, that calm confidence feels more valuable than ever.